And I like got really excited.
Just a roll for what stuff?
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can we get a roll call, please?
Chair Boschert.
Here.
Vice Chair McConnell.
Present.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Here.
Commissioner Colling.
Here.
Commissioner Dunn.
Here.
Commissioner Tomacek.
Present.
Commissioner Mayo.
Here.
Commissioner Zhang.
Present.
Commissioner Torres. Present. Thank you. Roll call is complete.
Okay, we have a quorum and none of the alternates will be voting tonight. Can I get a motion for a approval of the meeting minutes of the prior meeting? Commissioner Carpenter.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, the prior meeting minutes are approved. Oh, excuse me. Roll call vote, please. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Chair Boschert.
Yes.
Chair Boschert is in favor. Vice Chair McConnell.
Yes.
Vice Chair McConnell is in favor. Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter is in favor. Commissioner Colling.
Yes.
Commissioner Colling is in favor. Commissioner Dunn.
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn is in favor. Commissioner Tomacek.
Yes.
Commissioner Tomacek is in favor. Commissioner Mayo.
Yes.
Commissioner Mayo is in favor. Vote is complete.
And the motion passes unanimously. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, comments were accepted electronically and via voicemail and were delivered to the Planning Commission and posted to the public agenda packet online prior to the meeting. Those who wish to give comments and signed up in advance per the online guidelines will be called upon in order to speak during the live meeting. There is only one agenda on tonight's meeting, and that is presentation of the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. And before we go forward, I would like to mention that the only thing we will be discussing tonight is the comprehensive plan. Any individual projects will not be up for discussion. And specifically, the Uplands project will not be affected by our vote tonight or by any of the changes that occur at this meeting. That project is taking place under the old comprehensive plan, and we will not be affecting any of that with our votes tonight. Andrew?
Good evening, Chair Boschert. Thank you for the introduction. Good evening, Vice Chair McConnell and Planning Commissioners. I'm Andrew Spurgeon, Long Range Planner in the Community Development Department. If the Commission recalls, we presented the draft 2040 Comprehensive Plan at the April 27th Planning Commission meeting, and then we came back to you on July 13th to get some additional feedback, help us prepare a final draft, and we also checked in with City Council on August 2nd. Again, to get some final feedback to form the final draft that is before you tonight. For the benefit of our audience tonight, I would like to go through the presentation and review some of the document's organization and review the criteria of approval established by Westminster Municipal Code. Next slide, please. The agenda memo and attachments are entered into the public record, and the legislative public hearing has been noticed as required by Westminster Municipal Code. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to receive staff's recommendation and hold a legislative public hearing on the new comprehensive plan. A legislative hearing differs from quasi-judicial hearings in that its purpose is to consider the appropriateness of citywide policy to inform future decision-making. A quasi-judicial hearing, which is what the Planning Commission more typically has, considers how a policy or city ordinance applies to a particular project at a particular location. So this legislative hearing is not about a specific project at a specific location, but about the citywide policy in the Planning Commission's recommendation capacity to City Council, who's the final decision maker on the plan. Staff's recommendation is outlined in the agenda memo and is informed by the criteria of Westminster Municipal Code 1132. Planning Commission may choose to recommend to City Council to approve the plan with modifications, or recommend to deny the plan. If the plan is ultimately denied by City Council, then the existing 2013 comprehensive plan would remain in effect. Next slide, please. For the benefit of our audience, I would like to highlight some of the key takeaways from the plan. The 2040 comprehensive plan is a high-level citywide policy document organized around Westminster Forward themes to support alignment and policies across all plans. The Westminster Forward plans work as a coordinated suite of plans. Therefore, the comprehensive plan is not in isolation from the completed sustainability plan, the completed water supply plan, or the adopted transportation mobility plan, or other Westminster Forward efforts. The plan is long-range in nature, with goals and policies to support the anticipated needs of the community and its changing demographics in year 2040. As a long-range forward-looking plan, it is separate from immediate considerations before the city, including those development applications that have already been duly filed with the city. The draft plan results from priorities identified in stakeholder interviews and community engagement, and has been refined based on feedback from those who submitted comments on the draft plan. The plan carries over much of the content from the existing plan, including 95 of the 161 policies, and it maintains parks and open space as the primary land use in the city, with low-density residential uses also comprising a large part of the city. The plan increases the focus on neighborhood planning and the character of development beyond a parcel-by-parcel view of land use, and introduces new, more relatable naming conventions for the land use types. Land use is just one policy within the overall plan framework and has been tested with the water supply plan and evaluated for fiscal impacts at a citywide scale. In consideration of the sustainability plan strategies and the water supply plan findings, the comprehensive plan recognizes the resiliency of existing neighborhoods becomes a more central focus as the city nears build out. Next slide, please. At the March 9th Planning Commission meeting, staff provided a presentation reviewing public input that informed the plan, and this material is summarized in Appendix B of the plan. Since we found low attendance at some of the early plan-specific events, we identified community-wide events such as Harvest Festival and Movies in the Park in an attempt for staff to go to the people instead of making the people come to staff. We also reached out to specific groups to include in this process the Youth Advisory Panel. We had a meeting with the Hmong community at the Community Garden, Latino Festival, the Westminster Chamber of Commerce, the Home Builders Association of Metro Denver, and an individual presentation was made to a representative of the Save the Farm organization. Spanish translation services were available for city-hosted events, and a Hmong translator helped us with our meeting with the Hmong representatives. In 2020, we also used a meeting in a box tool due to the COVID-19 protocols that limited public gatherings. Those that completed that activity also helped us shape the final draft. The final draft was publicized on April 1st through an online engagement platform. In addition to the online interface, hard copies of the plan were available at both the College Hill and Irving Street libraries. Through the online interface, a total of 163 comments from 27 different people came in, as well as 10 additional external reviewers. A summary of these comments is included in attachment 9. Pertinent referral agencies were notified as required by Westminster Municipal Code and as described in the agenda memo. Those referral agency responses are included in attachments 11 and 12. Finally, we created a frequently asked questions document in English and in Spanish to ensure understanding of the plan's purpose, content, and its limitations, which is attachment 3. Next slide, please. Based on Westminster Forward input, 4 guiding principles for the plan have been identified as the overarching concepts for developing the plan. This structure will help ensure the spirit of community engagement is maintained throughout the plan, and these guiding principles align with the city's vision statement to be a thriving community of safe neighborhoods and beautiful open space that is sustainable and inclusive. Thriving City refers to Westminster's identity, its diversity and inclusivity, and economic resiliency. Healthy Places refers to how we embrace the outdoors through the parks and open space system and drive for a sustainable and safe community. Great Neighborhoods acknowledges our well-designed and attractive neighborhoods with housing opportunities for a range of incomes, age groups, and lifestyles. As the city nears build out, the focus of the new plan will be more on support for existing neighborhoods and shift the focus away from new development. Managed growth recognizes Westminster's maturity relative to development, its multimodal transportation network, and the responsibility with resources and infrastructure. As you can see from the pie chart on this slide, most of the city is already built out with only a small amount of vacant land, and some older commercial areas are expected for some degree of redevelopment in the future. Next slide, please. This slide shows the basis of the plan's policy chapters organized around the Westminster Forward planning themes. Each of the plan's policy chapters begins with a background narrative of existing conditions, trends, and challenges, and then identifies a series of goals and then policies to help realize those goals. Land use is just one policy and must be considered within the overall plan framework relative to housing, economic resiliency, wellness, and resource conservation. Next slide, please. With this slide, I'm going back to one of the first activities in public engagement where areas were identified with either the largest vacant parcels or where future redevelopment activities anticipated. Public engagement featured a visual preference activity that allowed participants to select preferred land uses, building types, amenities, and transitions to established neighborhoods. At the time of public engagement, these were called opportunity areas or areas of change to emphasize how the majority of the city is expected to remain stable. The profiles of these areas in Chapter 2 of the plan will augment the land use map with considerations such as views, trails, connections, or park locations. Where staff has struggled with the existing plan is that we have a land use map that has various colors that are assigned for different land uses, but we don't have that additional planning context to try to work with developers to obtain park sites or appropriate street connections. So this is an extra layer to help us provide that good planning. The focus area concept from the existing comprehensive plan will continue, and the 5 focus areas in the existing plan are brought forward, although reduced in size. Transition areas should not be equated with focus areas. Transition areas are a very different concept. These are those unique places in the city that warrant special considerations beyond just a color on the land use map, but they're not intended for the scale of development as focus areas. I've been asked why the Westminster Heights transition area is included in the plan if the proposed uplands development is being processed under the existing comprehensive plan. The reason for that is that the transition area includes other properties, particularly east of Federal, with land capacity that warrant that additional planning consideration, such as the St. Anthony 84th Avenue campus. Without the additional framework for parks, trails, connections, and the public realm, staff is simply left with a color on the land use map, and then we have to negotiate with developers on matters such as parks, trails, street locations. This will increase transparency by providing those transition area frameworks. Again, this lack of direction is something we struggle with the existing plan, and we think this is a worthwhile enhancement. Next slide, please. The next slide is land use and development, which is Chapter 3. It's one of the 5 main chapters of the goal and policy content of the plan. It's organized around the 5 goals shown on the slide. The land use and development content was influenced by the opportunity areas exercise, given the built-out nature of the city. With this in mind, land use changes within the plan are limited to properties within or adjacent to these areas. The land use diagram maintains over 98.6% of the city's land area with existing or equivalent land uses as expressed through the character types that respect existing development patterns while also providing for housing opportunities, commercial revitalization, and economic development at key locations. The predominant land uses are parks, golf courses, and open spaces, which account for 37% of the land area of the city. This is an increase from 33% of the current plan. Open space is only designated on publicly owned lands. Locations with proposed land use changes are shown in attachment 7. The most significant or largest of those are in the North I-25 area, with the Foster Farm property and the St. Anthony campus that have employment land uses in the proposed plan. And the next largest one is 41 acres in the Church Ranch area for the Water 2025 facility. There are no land use changes with this plan for the proposed Uplands project as it continues to be processed under the existing comprehensive plan. Next slide, please. Transportation, Mobility, and Connections, which is Chapter 4, contains goals that reflect those in the separate Transportation and Mobility Plan, or TMP as staff calls it. The overarching goals in the comprehensive plan support a transportation network to serve the land use diagram and other community needs. The modal networks, strategic actions, and projects to help achieve this vision are defined in the Transportation Mobility Plan, which was adopted by City Council on August 23rd. Since the TMP has been adopted by Council, it is essential that the Comprehensive Plan Transportation chapter matches it. Health, Wellness, and Community Services, which is Chapter 5, carries over much of the content from the existing plans chapter for parks, recreation, libraries, and open space, and key components of the existing plan's public utilities and services chapter relative to education and public safety. This revised structure aligns with Westminster Forward planning themes, but also adjusts the focus from how these topics relate to land planning to a more holistic view of community health, wellness, and the need for policies in areas such as support for local food production, access to healthy foods, and reconsideration of amenity spaces to allow for gardening and urban agriculture. Development of the Parks, Recreation, and Libraries Plan will follow the comprehensive plan with more specific content related to park and trail development, recreation, library and golf facility upgrades, arts and culture, and historic preservation. Stakeholders interested in the creation of additional parks and open spaces are encouraged to participate in the Parks, Recreation, and Libraries Plan. Due to legal considerations, the comprehensive plan only designates open space on publicly owned and managed properties. Vacant private property is not considered open space. Next slide, please. Economic resilience, which is Chapter 6, has some of the most extensive changes as compared to the existing plan. The city's Economic Development Department contracted with the CU Boulder Lead School of Business to understand the economic character and trends affecting the city as it looks to a post-COVID future and considerations for future financial sustainability. The plan builds on concepts of the current plan's economic element with correlation of land use considerations with neighborhood planning, workforce readiness, and financial sustainability. And this aligns with the shift in emphasis from traditional recruitment and retention activities to a modern economic development framework of supporting small and local businesses, placemaking, and workforce development. A nuance with this chapter is also considering Westminster's place in the larger region, recognizing that Westminster and neighboring communities effectively function as one regional employment and housing market, with significant flows of labor across municipal borders. Finally, another key topic in this chapter includes strategies to address financial resiliency in future years. The policies include evaluation of revenue diversification opportunities, proactivity with industry changes that may impact sales tax collections, and a recommendation to develop a fiscal impact model to evaluate future land use changes. Next slide, please. Housing and Neighborhoods, Chapter 7 was elevated to a key topic area for the plan to address in recognition of the city's built-out condition, aging population, and the need to better support existing residential areas. The plan introduces a neighborhood planning lens for consideration of new development. The neighborhood unit concept within the plan provides an evaluation framework to consider how a proposal fits within a greater neighborhood context with access to services, supporting transportation, and compatibility with neighborhood character. The city has put great care into planning residential communities, but as these neighborhoods age, there's a need to put equal care into the maintenance and long-term sustainability. This is an important paradigm shift with this comprehensive plan as compared to the existing plan. Echoing content from the sustainability plan, the comprehensive plan proposes new policies to support housing maintenance and neighborhood capacity building. These policies complement other plan content relative to workforce development, public health, wellness, and food access, and greater emphasis on conservation in accordance with the completed water supply plan. These are all noteworthy changes from the existing plan. Utilities and Resources, which is Chapter 8, outlines goals for the provision and availability of city utilities and infrastructure systems and public services. As compared to the existing plan, water conservation is embedded within the water supply discussion. The water supply plan that was completed earlier this year and the land use diagram in Chapter 3 were closely coordinated. In regard to projecting future water demand, most communities look at future population and extrapolate out a projection, which is a simple linear calculation. Westminster has innovated with a finer grained analysis to consider different types of development and their very different associated water demands. This variable land use approach continued with the current water supply plan and also evaluated the effects of weather and water conservation. The most significant threat to the long-term resiliency of the city's water supply is drought, as presented to the Planning Commission at the May 11th meeting. Other goals in Chapter 8 identify equity considerations into infrastructure policies and cost of service, and a new policy to support deployment of low-cost communication technologies in consideration of the digital divide. This increased focus on resiliency is again another change from the existing plan. Next slide, please. Chapter 9 of the plan describes how it will be used in future decision-making, including development review and with amendments. Some degree of future amendments is to be expected. Some of the land use changes included in our earlier April 1st draft were removed from the final draft in order to allow such land use changes to be considered at a later time when a preliminary development plan can be brought forward as companions to offer the opportunity to more narrowly tailor the range of allowed land uses, scale, and intensities to the site-specific conditions and to provide greater opportunities for participation from adjacent neighborhoods. When or if such cases are brought forward by private applicants, the new plan's goals and policy framework would be included in the evaluation of such proposals, while previously filed development applications may continue under the existing 2013 comprehensive plan. Chapter 9 also establishes a reporting process to assess plan progress and identify where adjustments may be needed. And an implementation action plan is proposed that will actually be housed outside the plan due to the frequency of updates, but it is included as attachment 13 for the benefit of the commission and the public observing it. In terms of the plan's cost, the plan explicitly states there is no specific financial commitment for implementation of the plan. Public Works and Utilities has identified that the plan will have infrastructure costs in line with past capital improvement planning. The fiscal impact analysis of the land use diagram was revenue positive for the city over the plan's 20-year planning horizon. With a reduced emphasis on new development as the city reaches build out, the focus in future years will be on the criticality of infrastructure, water conservation, and support for aging neighborhoods and business districts. This paradigm shift to support and maintain what we already have is already identified in the completed sustainability plan, water supply plan, transportation, and mobility plan. Next slide, please. Westminster Municipal Code provides criteria for adopting the comprehensive plan. This is in attachment 14. The first 4 criteria relate to the suitability of the plan content, and 3 additional criteria relate to the planning process. Staff's overall analysis finds that the plan is in conformance with the criteria. Development of the plan started with an inventory and review of 48 different city plans throughout the city organization. Then the plan was developed as part of Westminster Forward, which was coordinated with 5 other citywide plans. The sustainability plan, water supply plan, and transportation mobility plan are complete. The next up is the comprehensive plan, and then the parks, recreation, and libraries plan. A coordinated community engagement program was critical to developing the plan as described in Appendix B of the plan. This included a presence at 9 large community events, 12 additional community meetings, 6 online activities, 32 stakeholder interviews, and communications to raise awareness of the plan through City Edition, Westie Connection, the Weekly, the Westminster Forward newsletter, displays at the city's library and recreation facilities, announcements on the city's social media platforms, and over 20,000 website views. 5 work sessions were conducted for the Planning Commission and 6 presentations were held with the City Council, plus 4 additional information-only agenda memos. The plan is cognizant of the city's vision statement as revised in 2020 and expands upon the concept of the strategic plan through 46 goal statements within the 5 chapters as described earlier in this presentation. The language within the plan is a direct result of input from staff from across the city organization. Plan implementation will include partnerships with other governmental entities, nonprofits, businesses, and Westminster residents. Examples of these partnerships include school districts, counties, non-city utilities, and other governmental and non-governmental entities. The draft plan was sent to 26 different referral agencies for review and comment. Responses were received from Adams 12 5-star schools, City of Arvada, City County of Broomfield, Colorado Department of Transportation, Jefferson County, Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport, City of Thornton, Tri-County Health, Westminster Public Schools, Smart Commute North, Growing Home, and Apex Parks and Recreation District. Next slide, please. Staff recommendation is to hold a public hearing to receive input from interested citizens and to recommend that City Council approve an ordinance to adopt the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Staff's recommendation is based on the criteria set forth in Westminster Municipal Code 1132 that the public good is advanced by the plan goals and policies aligned with other Westminster Forward plans complementary with the city's vision. Next slide, please. The plan complements the city's vision and meets all of the 2021 strategic plan goals. Next slide, please. We understand a number of people that have contacted staff and the commission are concerned about the proposed uplands development. Please be aware that these development applications were filed with the city in 2018 and as a site-specific development plan under Colorado law are being processed under the existing 2013 comprehensive plan. The city cannot change the rules in the middle of the game for a site-specific development plan. Changing or opposing the proposed 2040 plan will not stop consideration of the development applications associated with the proposed uplands project. If the 2040 plan is not approved, the existing 2013 plan that enables the uplands applications will remain in place, but without the new policy content of the 2040 plan in topics such as public health, food access, the needs of the senior community, or the need for additional parkland south of 92nd Avenue. Uplands will be scheduled at an upcoming Planning Commission hearing. This concludes my presentation, and I will turn it over to the chair to open the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Spurgeon. Do any commissioners have comments or questions? Seeing none, I will now open the public testimony. Public testimony has been received in the form of emails, voicemails, and these will be read and/or played during this live meeting and entered into the permanent record. Those who wish to give comments and signed up in advance per the online guidelines will be called upon in order to speak during the live meeting. If you will be speaking tonight, either in person or virtually, please state your full name, address, and any other pertinent information for the record. You will be limited to 5 minutes, so please speak all of your comments at once. Please note that the commission is here to listen to your comments, but there will be no direct question and answer period, and that staff will be given an opportunity to address all comments and questions when all of the speakers and virtual speakers have finished. Jennifer, can you please tell us how many emails were received after the original packet was posted and how many speakers have signed up to speak?
Yes, Chair Boschert. We had 16 emails that were received after the original packet was posted on Thursday until the submission deadline of noon today. And those were emailed to the entire commission at 1 o'clock this afternoon. They're also published on the city's Planning Commission website. We have 4 in-person speakers this evening. We have 3 voicemails that will be played into the live meeting and no virtual speakers. And if you're all right with that, Chair Boschert, I will go ahead and ask the AV company to start playing those voicemails.
Please do. Thank you.
Would you prefer those voicemails to be played consecutively, or would you prefer a break, a pause in between each of those voicemails?
A short pause would probably be helpful.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Curtis, if you would please play those voicemails.
My name is Karen Ray, 4060 Shaw Boulevard, Westminster. I've read through the Comprehensive Plan 2040 provided to commissioners tonight and find it flawed in the conclusions being made. With only 1,100 acres of land left in the city, which have not been built out, this comprehensive plan is missing the opportunity to serve the community. It misses an opportunity to provide equal access to open space and parks to underserved communities. It continues on a course of undermining the purpose of City Code 11-6-8 by not mandating the requirement of public land dedication on all new development be enforced. It reinforces what has been de facto redlining in the city, underserving the most vulnerable populations, denying them access to healthy open space. And it continues on a course of adding more urban heat islands in an era where climate change is affecting the quality of life and where what we do today impacts future generations. Study after study proves how the less affluent the population, the more impacted by climate change. A new EPA analysis released September 2nd shows that the most severe harms from climate change fall disproportionately upon underserved communities. And nowhere in this comp plan that concretely addresses the unequal access to open space and parks, in particular in the older part of the city. The south part of Westminster is where there is the highest number of people of color, the area of the city with the lowest median income, and where the highest percentage of the city's senior population lives. Yet, this area has the lowest percentage of parks. For example, within the city boundaries of Shaw Heights, only 27% of children are within a 10-minute walk of a park. There is only one sentence in the entire document that recognizes the growing Latino community and no mention of the African American, Asian American, and Pacific Islander or indigenous populations. On page 66 of the Planning Commission packet is the description for build-out of what is referred to as Westminster Heights, 235 acres of pristine, undeveloped land at 84th and Federal. It is a centennial farm today, and it sits at the apex of the city. Here is an opportunity to preserve for the community and for future generations a public open space. Instead, the plan starts with business, not the community. It continues the decades of ignoring and redlining the south end of the city. Quote, the Westminster Heights area is envisioned to locate residential densities along the east side of Federal Boulevard to support transit lines and employment development at St. Anthony's campus. While there is a statement about something called an agrihood, it completely misses what could and must happen to this land if there is truly the will to put community before private business interests. Over this past year, Westminster has been recognized as having the third highest numbers of apartments built outside of Denver. Last week in the major media, it was reported that Westminster has the highest rent in the metropolitan area, beating Denver out. I ask the Planning Commission to not approve tonight this plan as it stands. Return this to staff. A study and concrete proposals on how to address the inequity in open space access needs to be presented with serving the community as the starting point. I believe the comp plan fails the test of the city-adopted city vision statement that we are a thriving community of safe neighborhoods and beautiful open space that is sustainable and inclusive. It does not achieve the goals of thriving city, healthy places, great neighborhoods, and managed growth. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lucy Sieber. I live at 5408 West 100th Court, Westminster 80020. I have reviewed the Westminster Comprehensive Land Use Plan for 2040, and in my opinion, it fails to support the city's vision statement. Over the past years, the city has engaged in an era of hyper-urbanizations. Our city citizens reacted to this by way of the Community Survey of 2020. Consequently, the urban corridor label was dropped. My objections to the comprehensive land use plan are as follows. Westminster Highlands. If build-out is as projected, 6,000 to 7,000 residents will be occupying that plot of land. We will be dropping a city the size of Gunnison, Colorado in our midst. Currently, the city is struggling to provide for the infrastructure needs of our citizens. Another reason is the paucity of open space and parks in the southern part of Westminster. For instance, look at Oakwood Park. There are dog runs that are more spacious and welcoming. The water supply plan. The study states that, quote, climate change is not a major driver of the ultimate water needs, end quote. There's no evidence given to support this statement, and it certainly exhibits a cavalier attitude. Another point is more office parks. We have to keep in mind that we're living in a post-pandemic world. How can you justify additional office space? Right now, there are thousands of square feet of corporate space standing vacant. Another point is the public land dedication. In the frequently asked questions section, public land dedication has been modified to include such municipal additions as fire stations, libraries, and utilities. Does that mean that a detention pond could now be considered utility infrastructure and be included in a public land dedication? This most certainly defeats the intention of the article in the current city code. In terms of cash in lieu of public land dedication, people are wondering what has happened to that additional revenue, and is it being put forth to procure additional open space. The issue of public land dedication, I addressed an email to the city this past June. I was told the city did not offer exceptions, but rather alternatives. I don't care what you call it. I believe developers view these exceptions or alternatives as givens. The rapid growth has been incentivized. In summary, I believe that the current draft of this plan will not alleviate our citizens' displeasure regarding their city leadership. Please give this plan a critical eye and restore citizens' faith in good governance. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Michael Eisenstein. My address is 6890 Lowell Boulevard, Westminster, Colorado. And thank you for taking time to listen to my testimony at today's Planning Commission. Currently, I own property at Westminster Station and have been working hard alongside my wife in rehabilitating different structures and welcoming exciting new tenants to the area. I'm also the proud landlord to the La Rosa Cerrone Church at the station and value them as an integral part of the station community. I work on various real estate projects throughout the Front Range But Westminster Station has always been closest to my heart. Why? Because it's magnificent. So much care and thought was put in its planning and execution. So many partners came together to help fund and bring this project to life. Everyone should be so proud of themselves. We are trying to improve the perimeter of the station park because the station community deserves that. Our area of focus is the neighborhood and blight of the Stoneyard and Junkyard on Lowell Boulevard, where the new nature park is being constructed. This area surrounds the nature park and the Little Dry Creek Dog Park. It fronts the creek and its pathways lead directly to the station. It is now a dead zone. It is blight and it's also a high crime area. We want to revitalize it. We are requesting the area be included in the station area so we can make it magnificent. The current zoning and form controls in the proposed comprehensive plan will keep it blight for many years to come. And that was not the intent when creating Westminster Station. That is not in the interest of the community or city. We believe the way the comprehensive plan is currently drafted not only negates the vision, but also downgrades density for the Stoneyard and Junkyard, which kills any development. Instead of appreciating the moment to finally spark the station, it is ending any talk of development for this area. If possible, we would like to meet with you in person at the location and give you a walking tour. I think this is an important moment to fully realize the early sentiment to revitalize the neighborhood. We believe this is an opportunity to remove one of its most blighted areas and create happiness, health, and revenue for the city and its citizens. Thank you for your time.
The first one that I signed up is Carl. I'm so sorry if I mispronounce this. Marita? Okay, thank you. Please approach the podium. Be sure to state your name and address, please, for the record, and you will be timed to 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
you.
Hi, my name is Carl Marita. I live at 8541 Circle Drive in Westminster. I have been a Westminster resident since 2002. I object to the plan and ask that you send it back to staff. I would like to start my comments by going over the guiding principles of the 2040 plan, starting with thriving community. I come here to speak for those of us who are underrepresented in South Westminster. We are thriving, but on a knife's edge. Less than 27% of residents south of 92nd live within walking distance of a park. Many of those parks are drainage ditches or HOA private parks. We need your help to keep our neighborhood thriving into the future. Healthy places. There's a divide between affluent neighborhoods and that have open spaces and parks, and those less affluent that don't have open space and park. We in South Westminster are the have-nots. We need your help to save our last open spaces and have a sustainable and healthy future. Dense housing and 65-foot apartment buildings will not get us to that healthy future. We should think creatively, for example, rezoning commercial properties, existing commercial properties, areas for housing. Great neighborhoods. This is also an area that we're currently failing. Cash in lieu of parks has become the norm. There's only open spaces south of 92nd are really drainage ditches, as I mentioned before. This is due to maximum density zoning. Do you know what makes a neighborhood great? It's not a 5-story apartment building. It's parks, open space, trees, and wildlife. That's what makes a neighborhood great. Those things are worth their weight in gold. Let's talk about managed growth. We have grown more in the last 10 years than we have in all the history of Westminster. This path is unsustainable. We risk destroying the very things that make our city great. There are projects currently being considered that would pave over the very heart of the city and sell it to the highest bidder. We cannot honestly call ourselves stewards of the environment and claim that we are leaving the next generation a viable future if we build on every last parcel of land available. We ask that you consider the purchase of private land not just public land, for parks and open spaces. Dare I say that water has become a hot topic in this city? We have done the research and it shows that the current water supply is already allocated elsewhere. There are no other sources of water coming online to feed the maximum density. The world is getting hotter and drier. The world is getting hotter and drier. What will the world look like in 2040? It sounds like the plan is merely changing the calculations of water instead of changing the plan to updated conditions. I leave you with this. Taking developers' promises at face value and collecting their money is very easy. Nothing worthwhile is ever easy. We are asking you to do what's hard. We are asking you to lead and to save the city, to save our open spaces, to improve our lives, protect the underrepresented citizens of South Westminster. Make a stand before the Westminster we know and love is gone forever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Eric Wyckoff. Was that the gentleman that left?
Yeah,
Is he coming back?
I think he is. He had to put his dogs away, but
Okay, I'll call him at the end here. Next up would be Karen. I'm so sorry. I'm going to let you pronounce your name at the podium, please, so I don't mess it up. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Karen Calabady. I live at 9940 West Cliff Parkway, which is an apartment. And I agree that the Westminster apartments are going up high in rents, but apartments should be looked at as much of a place to live as residential homes. We have some green space around our apartment, and I think we're going to have to start looking at new kinds of development in Westminster that conserve our open space, not just build out a lot of bungalows with concrete and asphalt around them. This idea that we're providing a 2040 plan, I don't know where that came from. The 2013 is already out of date in 2021. Why would we be proposing a 2040 plan? The most that this should be covering is 2025, 2030, and cover it in a better way than it is covering it. Again, you can say all you want about some plans that have been in the works since the 2013 plan, but when you carry them over in the comprehensive plan as a done deal, and then talk about parks and open space and connections to parks within 8 minutes of people's residences, I mean, that's a lot of nonsense. It doesn't even make sense with what's being proposed. If that's your vision, then you actually have to implement a plan that holds that vision. And this plan does not. I would not adopt it. It may have been based on some plans from the area, but I would prefer to see some plans that are based on cities in the world that are really progressive, really sustainable, really beautiful. Berlin, Lisbon, Singapore. These are progressive cities that are incorporating way more green space and actually making points of incorporating green space for a sustainable future. And quite frankly, I see a lot of kind of Adams County thinking, and I would never use Adams County as a model for progressive or beautiful city design. That's for darn sure. I can only hope that this is reworked to promote a really realistic plan and idea for the future rather than backtracking to 2013 and holding leverage that if it doesn't get adopted, then we have to go back to that plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Michael Fitch.
Hi, I'm Michael Fitch. I live at 10530 King Court. First time speaker here. A nice staff member actually encouraged me. I just came to watch, and he just encouraged me to speak, and I'm glad I did actually. I thought the plan was pretty good. There's a lot of negative comments, but I like growth, and I think that it's a good plan to plan for more growth. And I think that the plan could have even more density. To be quite honest, there's a lot of population growth. I'm a young person, obviously, and I think that I have a lot of friends who can't afford places because we're not building enough in the metro area, and so I think that that's something important. I'm glad to see things like accessory dwelling units, more multimodal density, apartment buildings, those kind of things in the plan. I think that that's really important. Not everybody can afford like an individual separate house. I heard a lot of people complain about the growth, but everything changes, and so I think so should we, and so should the city. We don't have enough housing, and that's a metro area problem, but we should do our part and build more. And I've heard a lot of complaints about the city not buying underdeveloped or undeveloped areas like Westminster Heights or what could be uplands. But since the city doesn't have enough money to buy that kind of a parcel, tens of millions of dollars just to throw out to buy that whole parcel and then develop it into open space or parks or those kinds of things, I think the city should have it be developed and get some parks out of it. I mean, it's going to be sold anyways, and the city can't afford tens of millions of dollars to buy it. Dense development, it is more sustainable on a per capita basis. And, over the last few years and the last decade or two, from my understanding, water consumption has been stable. We haven't really increased water consumption as a whole across the city because of the city's conservation efforts and those kinds of things. So I think that when people say that we don't have enough resources, I think that we do have more resources if we do it well. And I think this plan has a lot of ideas and a lot of things that would make it easier to develop and be sustainable. So thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Next is John Palmer.
Good evening. I hope that you either reject or send this back to council, or back to staff to be reviewed and reworked. There's a lot of holes in this whole program. The increased population versus our water capacity. There's a big hole there that we keep overlooking, or the city keeps trying to skirt. We seem to be about 4,000 acre feet short of water to complete this plan. There's a multitude of things wrong with this plan. Global warming. The more people we put in here, the worse it gets. We've all seen that. We've heard the president talk about it. Climate change. More people, climate change. Environmental issues by bringing more people into the city, not capping it. Not allowing the citizens to have more say in what's going on in this comp plan. This was all devised by people on staff that don't even live in the city, don't have anything vested in the city, don't own property in the city, don't have a long-term goal for living in the city. The residents of the city that are owners and shareholders and stakeholders should have more of a say and input instead of these little meetings that they all held during COVID, which nobody could come out to, nobody wanted to come out to. The surveys they sent out were very skewed and to a very minute portion of the population. They didn't send a survey out to 60,000 people. They sent it out to 100, 600. How is that fair representation of what the people want to see in the city? Because we need to send this back or just flat reject it. It doesn't fit. It won't fit till 2040. We're just kicking the can down the road here. Let's not do that. We've experienced that for years now by city council. Let's not give them the ammunition to do that.
Before you leave, can you give us your name and address, please?
Oh, I'm John Palmer. I live at 8571 Lowell.
Thank you.
60-year resident.
Very good.
One more time for Mr. Eric Wyckoff. Unfortunately, I don't think he's rejoined us. I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Bosher.
Thank you. Do we have any questions, or actually, I'm going to turn this over to staff for any comments regarding the public testimony. Andrew?
Thank you, Chairman. Is the public hearing closed now or after I speak?
Okay, at this time, then we will close the public testimony and allow staff a chance for comments.
I do appreciate those that have made the time to be here. It's really great that we have people that are concerned about the city, concerned about their neighborhoods. It's always nice to see. We did, as I mentioned during the presentation, we did go to City Council to get some additional direction before we finalized the plan. Part of that was adding a climate discussion to the plan that was not in the earlier draft. It's also something that's not in our current comprehensive plan. So adding climate, there are 25 goals and 44 different policies in the plan that speak to the climate topic. There is a Parks, Recreation, Libraries plan that is forthcoming. As I mentioned, the comprehensive plan cannot designate private property for parks and open space. It would be a taking under the law. But we would encourage folks to participate with the Parks, Recreation, and Libraries plan. Let me take this off. To identify places in their neighborhoods that they think would be appropriate. Based on the earlier input we got, we did add a policy statement in the plan related to the lack of parks south of 92nd Avenue. So that is a policy to pursue those opportunities with this new plan that does not exist should the existing plan remain in place. Thinking to some of Ms. Sieber's comments, this plan isn't only adding one new multifamily site in the entire city, 4-acre site, which is actually one of the sites Michael Eisenstein, who was the next caller, asked about. There are no, that's the suburban multifamily, the 18-unit per acre. We are designating no new sites for the urban multifamily, the 36-unit per acre. With this plan, we are aware of the population trends, and the chapter 1 of the plan actually talks about those. The city actually grew the most between 1970 and 1980, when 30,000 people were added to the city, and we had growth of roughly 20,000 plus per decade from 1960 to 1970 and from 1980 to 1980. The most recent census results do show we added 10,000, which was more than some of us expected, but it still is much slower growth than during the latter part of the 20th century. The target year of 2040 is, again, we were updating the existing comprehensive plan, which was based on the year 2035. 2035, 2040, those are chosen so that we can align with the Denver Regional Council of Governments planning documents and be eligible for those funding opportunities. We have to have a plan that fits within the Denver Regional Council of Governments DRCOG framework. So that's the basis for the 20 years. I did appreciate the comments on places such as Singapore, Berlin. You know, back when we could travel, that was nice to see. Places with those places, I did some quick checking. 18,000 people per square mile in Singapore, 11,000 people per Berlin. These are much more dense cities than Westminster, which has about 3,000 people per square mile. I don't remember any of the public engagement really touching on that. We had a lot of comments about people that thought the city was too crowded. So I think we're a little bit hesitant to increase densities with those other places. Water supply, I believe we addressed. Sarah Borgers is present if there's questions about water supply. The community engagement did begin in 2018. By design, the bulk of the engagement was in 2019. We did have very limited engagement in 2020 due to COVID, so it was fortunate that we had those events in 2019. As I mentioned in the presentation, the plan-specific events drew less turnout than we would have liked, so we went out to the different community events. The people, places, and plans events in 2019 One of those was in historic Westminster at the MAC. The other one was at City Park. Those combined had 75 people, but 598 people took the companion online survey at that time. By my math, we directly interacted with 2,085 people, and with the presence at large community events such as Movies in the Park and Harvest Festival, we were available to 75,000 different people. I guess that's what I would say about community engagement.
Thank you. Wonderful presentation, Mr. Spurgeon. Can I get a motion on this item?
Chair Bosher, can I ask a question first?
Sure, go ahead.
So, Andrew, rather than me hunting and pecking through the document, could you direct me to the policy statement about parks south of 92nd?
Sure, let me get to this. That is the last, that's on page 88, 10.6. Work with Adams County and/or Highland Hills Parks and Recreation District to identify potential park and recreation sites for unincorporated areas south of 92nd Avenue.
We will have a chance for questions during the discussion after the motion as well. So can I get a motion on this item? Commissioner Dunn?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, I would like to, let me get the wording here. Oh, that's the hard copy. Right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council approve the ordinance adopting the 2040 Comprehensive Plan.
I second.
Thank you, Commissioner McConnell. I would like to say, first off, that this plan is a great improvement over the current plan. It addresses the lack of parks in South Westminster. It took us a hard look at water and came up with a plan that will work for the build out. It includes very strict development guidelines, which any developer will have to follow if they wish to be part of the city of Westminster. And I think that's a great improvement. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner McConnell.
Thank you, Commissioner Boschert. So I have a water question. It has to do with, this is for staff, correct? Yeah. It's generally based on the water supply being allocated elsewhere, but in conjunction with that, for a number of years, we've been informed that Westminster had adequate water for build out. So if you could address those two, please.
So I might ask you to clarify that first question.
Okay, well, it was a comment made during public testimony that the water supply that we have is currently allocated elsewhere.
So maybe going back a little ways to how the water supply plan and the comp plan are linked. So the land use map that you see in the comprehensive plan, including a number of different versions of it to accommodate for variability that might happen over the next 20 years as the city develops. That land use map was physically translated into the amount of water that each of those individual land use types will need. And so I'm not doing a really clear job here. I'm going to try and do better. So when we do that translation, it assumes that each of the different land use types receives a certain amount of water per acre. And what you see in the land use map has that specific amount of water. It's not allocated to, but it's assumed that a specific land use type will use that amount of water, and that translates into an overall water budget for the city. I'm going to let you ask more questions if that was clear as mud, but what that means is there is not water that has been moved somewhere else. Water is accounted for based on the land use type that's on that site.
Okay, thanks. And the other question I had was probably based on the 2013 comprehensive plan about having enough water to reach build out of the city. So,
Yes. Yes. So that was one of the really interesting things that we did with this most recent water supply plan. We did an analysis of all 33,000 accounts to see how different land use types use water differently. And that was then applied to the land use map, as I was mentioning a second ago. What we've seen is that over time, the city's water consumption has actually declined over time, even though our population has increased. And so that was one of the things that we took a really close look at is, one, is that conservation trend, downward trend going to continue? If it doesn't, what does our water supply look like? And if it does, then what does our water supply need to look like? And there's a lot of variability that can happen with that. But assuming the conservation trend that we're seeing today continues, then we do have enough water supply for the ultimate build out of the city.
thank you.
If any commissioners have a question or comment, please turn on your mic light and then I'll know. Commissioner Mayo.
Yeah, I have a question about water too, so don't sit down so quick. When we had talked a few meetings ago about water, part of the plan was based on usage going down in conservation, like you're saying. I think we all know that we can cut the usage of water in half in Westminster just by charging $40 per 1,000 gallons. Okay. So the fact that the usage is going down is because my water bill is going up and we're consciously watering less. Doesn't necessarily mean our lawn isn't green anymore. We can get a little smarter about it. But, to me, we need to make sure the water's there and we're not betting on the come, so to speak. We're not betting on the fact that we can get people to take the city up on offers of paying for sod cutters and ripping their yards out. We shouldn't bank on the fact that, we're going to rip out 2,000 yards, therefore we have so many more acre feet, therefore we can get so many more condos. That math to me doesn't work. If we have everything on an equal footing and we say, all things being equal, we have this lake full of water over here and we've got, 1,000 acre feet left over, then to me that means, we can conceivably develop some more. So I think we need to actually have that water available before we build, believing we're going to have the water available later.
So that's a really great comment. We've heard that comment fairly frequently. And certainly there is a correlation between water rates and water demand. Our water rates are done separately based on our CIP and other things. They're not based on water conservation measures, but certainly it would be incorrect to say that there's not some impact there. What I will add to that too, from a water conservation perspective, is that a lot of what we're seeing in terms of water conservation is actually happening indoors. So it's things like people replacing toilets with efficient toilets, washing machines, dishwashers. You can't buy that stuff anymore and have it be high water consuming. And it was a really interesting part of what we learned was some of it is outdoor as people decide to put different landscape in, but a lot of it's happening indoor as well. And that's a trend that is being seen across the country. So it's not just Westminster, it's, people in the East Coast, people on the West Coast, and everyone in between has seen this slow decline in water consumption. Now to your next point of making sure that we've got enough water to last us. So we don't want to build an apartment building and then 10 years later figure out we didn't have the water to support it, right? That's my head on a platter. I don't want to go there. But there is some level of risk associated with this. We could never spend enough money to make a water supply that is 100% of the time going to support anything that might happen in terms of either water supply or water demand. But that said, we have to make these concerted decisions, and we have to be more conservative than not. One, our water supply is largely built out. So there are, with the exception of the Wattenberg Reservoir project, the water supply is largely built out. We do have one pending water court case going on that will be important for us. But that piece we have a pretty good handle on. The demand side is really dependent on how we can continue to move forward. So the conservation trends are really the big piece of what that water demand looks like moving forward.
Being an HOA president for the last 25 years, I can take you to our HOA and show you 20 yards that don't even know how to turn their sprinklers on. They're not conserving water, they're conserving money. So to count them in this conservation movement is fooling ourselves.
Right. And I don't know if we're maybe getting into a topic that's maybe better for a different conversation. There certainly is a correlation there between rates and water conservation. But I think from the perspective of the comprehensive plan, we made assumptions that conservation trends would continue, and we also ran scenarios where it did not continue. And in most of those scenarios, we did have enough water supply to support this comp plan.
Sarah, wasn't it also, there was concern about, short-term trends that may not be very telling. And that's why we didn't assume conservation on the previous water supply plan. But now that we've had 20 plus years of downward water, that's why we have confidence that trend will continue, because it's been over 20.
That's a great point. Yeah, we were worried about what we call drought shadow after the 2002 drought. So we did see this kind of dip in water consumption after the drought when we had implemented mandatory drought restrictions. And things did come up a little bit after a couple of years, but at this point, we have seen, since 2000, we've seen a pretty steady decline in water demand. Thank you, Commissioner. Those are great questions.
Commissioner McConnell.
Yeah, one last one. Do we know when council will take, no, this isn't about water. Just one last, sorry, should have been clear. When council will take up our recommendation to adopt an ordinance to.
Yeah, we're planning to take that to City Council on October 11th.
So, and the reason for asking that question is that citizens of Westminster will have an opportunity at that point to present some of these arguments to council as well as they have to us.
Absolutely. The City Council will also have to consider the plan in a public hearing format with the opportunity for testimony from the public.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're still discussing the motion, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, great. So, all right. So we do have a motion on the table here, and I'm going to vote against supporting this plan. There are several things I don't agree with, and I completely agree with the staff or Sarah there. Yeah, thank you. With the idea that we need to be more conservative on water, but also, if trend lines are a funny thing. Last week's rehearsal for Planning Commission, we had 7 people here. This week we have 9, so that's a 28.6% increase. So 20 meetings from now, we're going to have 153 member planning. Okay, that's a little ridiculous, but you get my point. Yeah. So I think we need to keep the baseline right now. That's a major concern. But and I think I think this does need to be reworked. And the other thing that really gets me is the transportation portion of this. This has Vision 0 in it, which basically says have the speed limit be 5 miles an hour because otherwise the principle is it can never be acceptable that people are killed or seriously injured when moving within the road transportation system. That is patently absurd. And if you're looking for that, it's it's page 105. But that is not something we can do. And the other thing is they want to use transportation demand management to encourage use of modes of transportation other than single occupancy vehicles, which 90% or more choose for every single trip. This is and while it claims that this is a pro-people plan, this is an anti-people plan here. We just think we prefer somebody to have a 2-hour commute taking the bus to having a half-hour commute, to extra time that they could be spending with their kids and everything like that. That has a cost too, and I believe this plan is too much on the side of forcing people into things that they don't want. So between the water and the transportation, I'm voting no on this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'd like to make some comments.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your light. Commissioner Young.
So first, I want to thank staff for taking the time and dedication to work on this comp plan. I want to thank the members present here, voicing their concerns and their support for this. I particularly want to thank staff for adding Chapter 5 and listing some of the public assistance programs and partnerships that the city provides, like the English class and Spanish language classes. Not myself, but my parents were participants in that. I'm not sure if at the time when they participated, the city was involved, but I think those courses are great. And then I'd like to thank staff for working on Chapter 6 and taking the due diligence and partnering up with the University of Colorado and the Business Lead program and doing an economic model on not forecasting, but looking into the future of how you can maintain a vibrant and strong economy in the city of Westminster. However, I kind of want to switch my thoughts towards some of the comments made today about communication and outreach. Though it is my opinion that the city did reach out to community members and made an attempt to reach out to them. Based on the comments today, it's clear that there's a disconnect, and I would like to make, or at least make the point that maybe there's something that the city has to review in the process of reaching out to community members, particularly members who are marginalized and members who live in South Westminster. And those are just my comments.
Thank you. Seeing that there are no more comments, I will call the question. Can we get a roll call, please?
Chair Boschert.
In favor.
Chair Boschert is in favor. Vice Chair McConnell.
In favor.
Vice Chair McConnell is in favor. Commissioner Carpenter.
Against.
Commissioner Carpenter is not in favor. Commissioner Calling.
In favor.
Commissioner Calling is in favor. Commissioner Dunn.
In favor.
Commissioner Dunn is in favor. Commissioner Tomachek.
In favor.
Commissioner Tomachek is in favor. Commissioner Mayo.
Opposed?
Commissioner Mayo is not in favor. Vote is complete.
Thank you. The measure passes 5-2. And so it is therefore sent on to City Council. Any further comments? Okay, then I would ask if there's any old business that needs to be addressed. Any miscellaneous business? This meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you, staff, for your excellent work on this. Done a great job.